I've got a successful business. Am I avoiding getting a nice new car because I don't think I deserve it? In other words, is that the imposter syndrome? Or is it really because I genuinely don't?
But I think it's really important for you to be able to take a step back and be like, well, hang on, look, I came all the way from down there.
Yeah.
Like, I've come a long way.
Yeah.
Maybe I should stop, give myself a little bit of a pat on the back to get myself to the peak.
People move from accumulation to protection to fear. And I guess, we've got to try and help those people to find a way to understand that the fear is not rational, but it's perception and reality. Welcome to the latest edition of the Mastermind for Business podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how it is that you determine whether your targets or the goals that you set yourself are actually for you. And also let's talk about why it is that you need to focus on what's important to you in business. Let's get that underway right now.
If you want more time, money, freedom, and have a business that's not reliant on you, then you're in the right place. Each week, Mark Creedon, along with some of the very best business minds in the world, will take you through simple, practical steps you can take to create the business you always wanted. From his own practical experience, Mark will show you how to work less, make more, and get the business you always wanted, the one that you deserve. Now here's your host, one of Australia's most sought-after business coaches, Mark Creedon.
Joining us, as always, in the chair is Nick. Mate, great to have you back.
Hello.
Nick, I was talking to one of our clients the other day and we were talking about, just leading off the episode I did an episode a couple of weeks ago about the imposter syndrome. And I said, how do you get rid of the imposter syndrome? And he was saying to me, well, I get that, but how do I know if I set myself up a target or I look at a target and I go, well, hang on, am I saying I don't want to get to that target because of the imposter syndrome? Or am I saying I don't want to get at that target because it doesn't really matter to me? And the example he used was a car, right? He said, so, I drive a shitbox. I'm making good coin. I've got a successful business. Am I avoiding getting a nice new car because I don't think I deserve it? In other words, is that the imposter syndrome? Or is it really because I genuinely don't, it just doesn't matter to me. I don't care what I drive. And how do I work out between the two?
It's a hard one, isn't it?
It's a really hard one. In fact, one of our clients said to me when I bought my new car, he said, how'd you feel buying your car? And I said to him, the difference between this car and the very, very first time I bought myself a nice car was the first time I bought it for other people.
Right.
This time I bought it for me. Right? Mm. So I don't really give a shit if anybody sees me in it. Right? I don't care about that. Mm. I only drive it a couple of days a week. But I drive it for me because when I get in it, I feel good. And for you when you borrow it.
Yes.
And get pinched.
Yeah. I don't.
We're going to talk about that.
Let's not go there.
No, that's right.
By the way, pinched. It's just a speedy fine.
Oh, yeah. No, you weren't nicked. I don't mean you were nicked. Like,
a little bit different.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really hard because it's hard to understand whether, within yourself, whether you're really hating on yourself or whether you believe that it's something that you deserve or not. I struggle with that quite a lot.
Yeah. I think we all do. And I think that's the great thing about humility. So some of the nicest, most successful people I know are actually quite humble about their success.
Sure.
And so they don't want necessarily to have this great, outward display of extravagance, but they do live a very comfortable life.
You would have met some people previously, though, that necessarily have quite a lot of coin.
Yes.
But don't spend that sort of money on themselves.
Purely,
not because they think that they don't deserve it, not because don't have the money or anything like that, but it's more so because they actually just don't want to spend money on something like that?
Oh,
They
Nick,
would rather spend their money elsewhere.
yeah. Well, I had a mate who was very, very successful, multi-millionaire, but he was terrified of losing it. In fact, he was so terrified of losing his money that he wouldn't spend it,
Right.
even though he could.
Right.
He used to ring me sometimes. I'm at the bottle shop and they've got some clean skins here for like $4 a bottle. I'm thinking of buying a carton. Do you want to go halves with me? And I
So
go,
he was incredibly cheap then.
he was incredibly cheap. He was.
Yeah.
But he didn't need to be.
No, and that's I've met people like that as well, where it's, you know, they've got the coin. It's not that they don't believe that they deserve it. They're not doing it for that. They're purely just doing it because they think, well, that's not a good spend of my money. And I think they probably come from a place where they didn't have a lot of money.
Correct.
So spending money on things like that just isn't even an option to them.
Yeah,
They just
correct.
think it's silly and waste of money, even though they've got plenty in the bank.
Yeah.
And that they wouldn't, that it wouldn't even be a scratch on the surface of what
No.
they've got.
No, could never spend as much as they have.
No.
But I think that one of the risks you run is that you can spend so much time accumulating money that you then move from accumulation to protection stage. Stuart Wilde, who was one of my favourite sort of metaphysical authors, used to write about this a lot. And he would say that people move from accumulation to protection. And then they
So
move...
instead of chasing money, they protect what they've got.
Yeah.
Right.
So they move from accumulation to protection, and that's fine. But then you can move from protection to fear.
Yeah.
And-
fear of losing it.
Yeah, and he would talk about people who would have this fear of losing it, even though there was nothing in their life. They weren't gambling. They weren't engaging in high-risk business activities. They didn't have any vices. They weren't doing a Charlie Sheen.
Is it do you think, because they don't have the chase in them anymore?
Yeah.
Because they get to a point where they go, well, holy shit, I would never be able to accumulate this again.
Yes, that's it.
So
100%.
now I really have to hold on to
Yep.
what I've got.
So often it comes with age because there's a time thing, right? So I can't reaccumulate this. If it all went
Haywire.
foul tomorrow,
Can't go through this shit again.
yeah, I could not recover to that same level. So time's against them.
Yep.
There's a number of things. Time, opportunity. Sometimes the opportunity, I mean, you make your own luck, right? But they've made their luck. They've been in the right place, right time. They come up with the right product at the right time, or been first to market, or whatever it might
Things
be.
have changed or whatever it is.
Yeah, market's changed. So there's all of those fear factors that come in, and so you sort of end up potentially being the richest man in the cemetery, or richest person in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And so I think that's Stuart Wilde used to often talk about how that was a really valid thing, that would people move from accumulation to protection to fear. And I guess we've got to try and help those people to find a way to understand that the fear is not rational, but it's perception and reality, right? If they perceive it as rational and real, then it absolutely is. But let's just pare it back a little bit, because where we started this conversation was about somebody going, well, hang on a second, I can afford, just using a car as I can afford to buy myself a really nice car, but I don't want to. And the question that this client put to me was, am I saying I don't want to because I genuinely actually just don't want to? Or is that me having that little bit of imposter syndrome going, shit, what will people think if I start driving a car, or I don't deserve the car?
Yeah, I'm not at that point yet.
Yeah. I mean, a car's
I
just
haven't earned it yet.
a car's just a piece of metal and four wheels, right? So it's just an example, but it could be anything. It could be a boat or a plane or a nice house or a new suit. Michael Yardney often talks about how many years ago he would travel overseas and he'd buy really nice replica watches. And then, one of his kids said to him once, Dad, like, you can afford a nice watch. Like, stop buying the replica shit and get yourself a real one. And it was a bit of a turning point for him where he went, actually, you're right. I can buy myself a nice watch.
Do that now.
I guess we go spend some coin on a nice watch. I think the answer that I gave is that I think it's a matter of going just in those moments of quiet. I think there's two things. One, in the moment of quiet contemplation when you're just sort of comfortable in your own skin and with yourself, you stop and you look, do you know what? Why am I walking away from that particular desire or goal? Is it because I'm worried about what people think, or is it because I just don't? I'd rather put my money somewhere else?
It could be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right. Could be a little bit of, it could be a little bit of, well, you know what, maybe I don't feel like I'm at the point, maybe I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. Maybe I just don't want to, but maybe that's because, you know, you feel that that's how you've gotten to where you are.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the question that he was asking was, you know, how do I either break out of that cycle? And I think one of the other things that you can do with that sort of thing is to go, okay, let's just use the car as an example. Let's say that, you know, I'm going to go buy myself a car and spend a couple $100,000 on a car, whatever it might be. And it doesn't matter. It could, for you, it could be 50 grand or 60 grand or 10 grand or, you know, wherever you are in your journey right now. But I'm going to go spend money on a car and I'm asking myself, am I avoiding doing that because I genuinely don't care, or is that the imposter syndrome kicking in? And I think the question to ask there is, what else would you do with that money?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
What
if
else
you're not going to buy a car, where is it going to go?
Yeah, right. So I was talking to Ollie Wood from Body Reset. Great guy, working on Ollie's program at the moment. And we were talking about watches. So Ollie and I have a bit of a passion for both cars and watches. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about watches, and he said, he just bought himself this Omega Seamaster. And I went, it's a great watch. And he said, what's your go-to watch? And I was sharing a couple of watches that I've got. And then I said to him, I saw this great, I think it's Jaeger Le Couturier watch in Singapore. Stunning watch, a dress watch. One of the nicest watches I've ever seen in my life. And he said to me, you know, did you love it? I mean, I loved it. He goes, well, why didn't you buy it? I said, because it was $68,000. Do you know, now, could I have put 68 grand into a watch? Yeah, probably.
Sure.
But all I could think of was, oh man,
What else could I do with that?
Well, yeah, it would buy me experiences.
Yeah.
Right?
Rather than one thing, I could get 20 things.
Yeah, or I could
do 20 things.
Yeah, do things. For me, it was about experiences.
Yeah. So it's what really, I guess, matters to you, or what is priority for you in regards to where you want to put your money.
Yep.
Sometimes what you want versus what you need is two very different things, and sometimes the priority lies in you need it, right? So you might want to spend it all on experiences because that's what you want to, but sometimes you have to spend the money on the car because you need the new car.
Yeah.
So there's some things where you have to spend the money.
Well, that's an experience for you, right?
Can't avoid it.
You bought a new car.
Yeah.
But you needed it because your car was shit itself.
Yeah, that's right.
And that doesn't always have to be in the alternative, right? So you can go and have great experiences and you can drive a nice car. I mean, you don't have to have one or the other. But I think the big thing is just to think about this. If you're struggling with that question, I think the best thing you can do is just take yourself away, and whether it's into a corner of your home, your office, whatever it might be, or away, but just stop and just be at peace with yourself.
Yeah.
And search that inner question. Why am I saying no to this? Is it about what other people will think? Is it about the imposter syndrome? Or do I genuinely not want to do this? And one of the ways of looking at that would be, okay, if I didn't do this, what would I do with it instead?
Yeah. And also, I don't want to be one of those guys, but, trust your gut.
It's a good point, mate.
You've gotten to where you are now, by being a certain way. And I find it with diet, I've lost quite a bit of weight and stuff, and I focus on my health and fitness, and I found it really hard to break out of my diet mindset quite a lot, because it's what got me here, and there's that fear of putting the weight back on and all that sort of stuff, and I'm healthy where I am now, so you don't want to lose that. What you've got to do sometimes, and people really struggle with this, especially people who are still right in the thick of it, they're still climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
You find it hard to reach back and give yourself a pat on the back.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
When you're in the middle of Mount Everest, you're still not at the peak.
Yep.
It's hard to give yourself a pat on the back because, you haven't reached the peak, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's really important for you to be able to take a step back and be like, well, hang on, look, I came all the way from down there.
Yeah.
I've come a long way.
Yeah.
Maybe I should stop, give myself a little bit of a pat on the back to get myself to the peak.
Yeah,
right?
so that every Friday in our mastermind group, every Friday in our Friday sessions, we always start the session off with what's been your win for the week. Because you've got to stop, and I think as business owners, entrepreneurs, and people in leadership positions, one of the things we do quite poorly we forget to take stock of what it is that we actually have achieved and give ourselves a pat on the back, as you say.
Yeah, you got to celebrate the little things. I think you say you got to celebrate the small wins. That they are just as important as the big wins, but also like, yeah, still be hungry. Like don't lose that passion, don't lose that hunger. It's gotten to where you are now. That mindset of no, I'm not going to go and waste my money on that shit has gotten to you where you are now, and that's why you go through that process as you get older and stuff, and you start to fear that you're going to lose it because you don't have that hunger, that passion anymore. So that becomes scary. But I think that's why it's also important to remember that you don't want to be the richest man in the cemetery.
No, shit, no.
There's no sense in accumulating and working so hard and trying to achieve this end goal if there is no end goal.
Yeah, it's a really
and if you
good
don't
point.
stop on the way.
Yeah. And I think there's a fundamental difference too between celebrating wins and resting on your laurels.
Yes.
So we talk about, I mean, again, in our Friday sessions, we talk about, hey, let's celebrate your win, but we also go, well, what's ahead for the week?
Yeah.
What's next? What's next? What's next?
It's great to, when I used to work for Carpical, we used to have a sales manager, and when you'd made a sale, anyone that made a sale, you'd have to send an email out to the sales group, and it would be, Nick with $17,000 at Carina.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then everyone would come in and be like, "Oh, good job, Nick," or whatever. And Keith, the sales manager, would always just be like, "Good, next?" ?
Yeah.
And that every time, no matter
Yeah.
what. I mean, it could be, breaking the record of the biggest sale in their history. And
Yeah.
you're like, that's good, but what's next?
Yeah.
And at the time, I think it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But
Yeah.
he was such a dog. He was so hungry.
Yeah.
He was so after it and so focused that it was just his main goal was to just keep you going.
Yep.
And it did.
So if you were to look at that, we're both rugby league fans. If you were to look at that in terms of kind of any team sport, that's a bit like you're really only as good as your last game.
Yeah, and it's some of the best teams that I've seen go through some of their best seasons ever. The language is always, we're not thinking about next week.
No.
We're thinking about this week now. We're not thinking about the grand final.
Yep.
That's 6 weeks away, 6 months away, whatever it is.
Yep.
We're thinking about right now who we've got up this week, and that's what we're dealing with, what's in front of us.
Yep.
So, and they're usually the teams that go all the way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. As some may say, I think that's might have been what went wrong for the Broncos in Brisbane this
100%.
last season.
In 2023, they were, week by week. That was the language the whole time, was week by week by week. Never thinking about the end game, the big hoorah. But they got there. They got to the big dance. They didn't win, but that's all right. We won't talk about that.
No.
They got close. For a group of young blokes, the season that they had to get as close as they did, I don't think anyone really picked it. If you said at the start of 2023 if they were even going to get close. But that changed the next year because they believed that they deserved to be there.
It's a good lesson, right? It's a good lesson. So you're only as good as your last win. And there's that fine line between celebrating your wins and resting on your laurels. But I think you're right, man. I think you do actually have to stop and take stock. I know it's something that I talked to Caroline a bit about, that sometimes we can get to the end of the year, and you and I are recording this now at the end of the year. But we can get to the end of the year and go, it's been a good year, but I didn't hit that target, or I didn't quite achieve that, or
Yeah.
And it's okay to acknowledge that you didn't maybe hit the target, or you didn't achieve exactly what you wanted to achieve, as long as at the same time you're acknowledging what you actually have achieved.
Yeah. Going back to a footy analogy, but you win the game, you still have the beers after.
Yes.
I mean, but then you're back at training Monday morning.
Yeah, ready for the next week.
So I think, as long as you can look back and go, well, I did this year, that's a big win. There's some big wins there. I did that last week. That's really good. But next week,
Yep.
I've got this. So now let's enjoy it. And now the focus reshifts into getting the next one.
Great lessons.
Yeah.
Great lessons. Well, mate, this is the last one for the year. 2024. Bring on 2025.
Yeah, it's been a great year.
Yep, it has been a great year.
Next year's going to be even better.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us. If there is a topic you'd like to hear us talk about in the Mastermind for Business podcast, please make a comment. Go to our YouTube channel. Just look up Mastermind for Business. Go to our YouTube channel. drop a comment in our socials and let us know something that you'd like to hear us talk about. If there's a particular topic in your business, if there's a problem in your business that you'd like us to solve for you and include that in one of these episodes, we'd love to do that. Send us the details through our socials or make a comment in the YouTube channel, and we will certainly look after that for you. Nick, thank you, mate. Thank you for a great year.
100%. It's been a good one. Looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Metropolemastermind.com.au. Love to have a chat to you in the meantime, please. Until the next episode in 2025, please make sure you spend time with those who matter most.
Thanks for joining us on the Mastermind for Business podcast. If you're ready to have a business that you're not a slave to, check out metropolemastermind.com.au or have a chat with Mark and the team at all the W's, see what's possible.today.